All right, welcome. It's now time to talk about one of the most amazing, fascinating places on Earth, one of the most biodiverse, or the most biodiverse area on our planet, and also one that has some of the highest net primary productivity, and that is the tropical rainforests. The tropical rainforests are unique. They're found in a belt around the equator. They take up about 7% of the Earth's land around the equator, and they contain 2/3 of the Earth's biomass and 1/2 of all the world's plants and animals. So you have a tremendous amount of biodiversity in a very, very small amount of land. The largest continuous rainforest is the Amazon Basin, and that is found in the country of Brazil. And that's where most of the rainforests are left in the world. There's lots to talk about here, so I'm going to try to go through it in a very quick way. And hopefully give you some perspective on this amazing ecosystem. There's so much information to give to you that I won't be able to do it in just one lecture, but I'm going to try to do as much as I can now to give you just a general overview. All right, tropical rainforests provide lots and lots of ecosystem services. You all know about ecosystem services. We've been talking about this now for a while. But one is that they are tremendous biodiversity. They provide tremendous biodiversity, and that's for the gene pool, so that there is tremendous genetic diversity inside the tropical rainforest, as you're going to see here today. Also, number two, they're climate regulators. Tropical rainforest, as we lose the tropical rainforest, we could literally alter the climate of the world. So they are water storages, they are carbon storages, they're the sinks for carbon dioxide, and it has tremendous impact on the overall climate. The third is that they are or provide protection for fisheries. Let's just do it this way. A, fisheries. Because the tropical rainforest going all the way to the coastline can turn into a mangrove forest, and you have the mangrove trees, which is a perfect spawning area for so much of our ocean's fish. But also they protect, or the protection for, I guess, protection from should be erosion. Okay? That the tropical rainforest can absorb the rainfall, all right, and actually take that rainfall, hold on to it, and put it right back up in the atmosphere through transpiration, and the atmosphere then uses it again for rain further down wind. So tropical rainforests literally create their own rain. All right, and finally, protection for, or from, I guess if you want to say it that way, flooding, because they absorb so much of that water. So if we deforest the rainforest, you can almost just see, and just think about it, just see that impact from those three things. Our fisheries are going to be damaged. You already know about the sediment going into the ocean, causing eutrophication, causing blocking of the sun over the coral reefs. If you get rid of the rainforest through deforestation, you're massive erosion and massive flooding. And you can talk about the flooding in places like Bangladesh, where you get rid of that forest around in the watershed, and you got tons and tons of water coming in, causing all kinds of flooding. All right, so that's just a quick overview. Now, next thing I want to give you a quick overview of is where the or different structures that you find in the rainforest. Hard drive there. Okay, so here we go. If you look at the structure of a rainforest, it's kind of unique. Okay, let's start with the forest floor at the bottom of the rainforest. Of course, I put it at the top. But what we're talking about now is the forest floor down here. And there's a couple things that you should know. That the soil is nutrient poor. Nutrient poor. Everybody thinks that tropical rainforests have great soil, and the exact opposite is true. All of the nutrients are sucked up and absorbed by the plants, so the soil has none. So it's very poor, full of iron, lots of clay. The nutrients are all in the plants. All right, the roots are very shallow because they get their nutrients from the decaying leaf litter and not from deep in the ground. So rainforest trees have very, very shallow roots compared to trees in our ecosystem. But the interesting thing is on the forest floor, it's very dark because the canopy blocks most of the light. It's very humid. It's cool. Everyone thinks it's hot, but really it's quite cool. We're around 70 to 80 degrees in the middle of the rainforest. And there's no wind because of the canopy blocking everything. And that's what you find at the floor. Then if you work your way up to the canopy, which is the most famous part of the rainforest because the canopy is where 2/3 of all the wildlife lives. It's not on the forest floor, but rather up in the canopy. And it blocks about 98% of the sunlight. It stops the wind, holds the moisture. It's sometimes called the roof of the rainforest. In fact, if you go to a pure virgin rainforest and you fly over in an airplane, you should never be able to see the ground. There are some specialized plants that you should know about that grow in the canopy. And you have to apologize. I'm going to try to draw them here on top of this picture. But if I was drawing a tree with a branch, all right, you would find plants that are growing on the branches of the trees with their roots wrapped around the tree. Those plants are given a name. They are called epiphytes. And epiphytes are in a commensal relationship with the tree where they use the tree, they benefit from the tree, but they don't hurt the tree. All right, and there are thousands of epiphytes found in the rainforest. There's specialized ones that have roots that hang down into the air. These are called lianas. All right, and lianas are what your monkeys and animals like to use to go from tree to tree, because the lianas can go down and then go across and head over to the next tree. So they use them as highways. And if you ever heard of Tarzan or George of the Jungle swinging on vines, that is not true. All right, because vines are rooted in the ground. What they are swinging on are epiphyte roots. But that's not as much fun to say as vines. But they're actually epiphyte roots. All right, so these are specialized plants that are in a commensal relationship with the trees. And they're everywhere in the rainforest. There is no such thing as a plant growing by itself. Okay? So the canopy holds most of that life. And then every once in a while, you have breaks in the canopy. And when I say breaks, I mean trees projecting up above the canopy in what you call the emergent layer. All right, and the emergent layer are the tallest trees. Okay, the famous one is the Kapok tree. The Kapok tree is the one that sticks up above the canopy, and because when you go above the canopy, the weather conditions change drastically, it's a whole different type of tree. So the emergent layer is like little islands sticking up above the canopy. All right, now you got sunny, hot, windy conditions, the exact opposite what you'd find on the forest floor. All right, very few trees can survive under those conditions. Okay, so let's take a look at just some fun life forms that exist in the rainforest, and hopefully you'll get to see them here. All right, first of all, the rainforests, as you can see, are found along the equator, largest section being in South America in the Amazon Basin. You have the Congo in Africa and the islands of Indonesia and Australia on the western side, or eastern side of Australia. The Indonesian islands are tropical rainforests because of the normal currents that bring warm air across the Pacific from South America. And they're in trouble right now because of El Nino, where that current shuts down. And the current was bringing warm water, which was causing rain. Now the warm water isn't coming across as often, and they're not getting the rain they need. A tropical rainforest needs about 88 inches of rain a year. And they're not getting the rain, so they're actually burning. A lot of the rainforests are burning. So they're having some trouble there with that. But anyway, it's across the band across the equator. So you get the red-eyed tree frog, the most famous frog in the world. It's the most photographed frog in the world. These are a couple of guys that I saw down in Costa Rica. We saw one of these, the poison dart frog. The more color you have in the animal, it's a sign that through evolution that it's a warning. So when you see an animal that has lots of color, it's a warning that it's either tastes bad or it's poisonous. This one's particularly poisonous. And you have to be careful when you touch them. You can't have a cut or scratch or anything like that on your skin. Then, of course, you have your variety of monkeys. These were the guys that would come down and try to steal our stuff. Okay, they hang out a lot. They stay in packs. You got larger monkeys like these spider monkeys, can grow much bigger. They have prehensile tails that they use almost like feet. And then you have some cool insects, all different kinds. This didn't come out real good. This is a butterfly that has wings that you can see through. This is the blue Morpho butterfly, one of the coolest butterflies you're going to find, and it's huge. It's one of the largest in the world, with 1 foot wingspan, and they were almost extinct because they were used to add color to ashtrays that they were making. So they take the wings and fuse them underneath some clear varnish or something on ashtrays to make them look pretty. So they were almost extinct. These guys were all over the place where we were. These are coatis, almost like the rainforest raccoon, I guess is the best way to describe them. Some strange creatures that can come in. This guy's definitely nocturnal for his eyes. And then, of course, you got the sloth. The sloth has a tremendous relationship with the Cecropia tree. So this is kind of interesting. The Cecropia tree secretes a sugar that ants love, so the ants flock to the Cecropia tree. And when anything tries to touch a Cecropia tree, the ants will attack it. So as soon as a bird lands on it, they attack it. If you try to touch it and shake a branch, ants will be attacking you within seconds. But the sloth repels the ants because algae actually grows in the sloth's fur. That algae that grows in the fur repels the ants. So sloths are not the clean, nice, cute little cuddly animals that you think of. They're basically disgusting hairballs stuck in a tree. All right. And then, of course, you got a few different types of sloths around the world. You got giant leaves because the light is so dim. The leaves have to be extra large to absorb whatever sunlight they can to carry out photosynthesis. And then, of course, you got a nice little hiding place for bats to stay out of the rain. But you do have things like squirrels. A lot of the generalists now are moving into the rainforest because we are changing the conditions of the rainforest by cutting down the primary rainforest, the original rainforest, and allowing secondary forests to grow, less biodiversity, and generalists are coming in to take over. All right. We still got squirrel monkeys. They're smaller. They travel in large packs. But also, a lot of the beaches are the breeding ground for many of our endangered sea turtles. All right, so what are we doing to the rainforest? What's going on? Well, we are cutting down the rainforest, and here you can see a great example of the incredible destruction that's occurring in the rainforest, okay, where you got the clear cut going on with all the trees, and all that's left is exposed soil. Trees by the millions are now available and put on the market. This is the best way to make money for tropical countries. It's the most valuable resource they've got. And to pay back debts and to help create a financial system for their people, they sell off the rainforest. And this is what happens to a rainforest because the soils are so bad, the nutrients are in those trees. When you cut the trees and take them away, you've just broken down the nitrogen cycle, and you end up with places like this. Here you can see the process by which they cut down the trees, or they knock them down, and then they'll burn the forest. It's given a name. It's called slash and burn agriculture. So they'll come in, they'll burn large sections, and use that section that's burnt out for farming. All right, it's the easiest way to get rid of the rainforest. At any one time in Brazil, there's about 2,000 forest fires going on at any particular time. And that's all slash and burn agriculture. So you see that. They're being destroyed for many reasons. One is the logging. 2 is the slash and burn agriculture. 3 is pasture land for cattle. Okay, and then 4, which you don't hear a lot about, that is plantations. All right, growing corn in the rainforest, but mostly coffee, banana, and the one I saw in Costa Rica, palm oil. Now, palm oil is used to make creams and makeup smooth. And we went into a palm oil plantation. We had to drive through it, and it took us about a half an hour to drive through it on a paved road. And there's several towns within the palm oil plantation, and that's the workers. They actually live inside the palm oil plantation. The highest, we're losing about 0.8% of our rainforest a year, and Brazil has one of the highest rates of destruction. So here's an area that was slashed and burned. You come in, you cut down all the valuable trees, burn what's left or what grows back, all right, and then you use it for agriculture. The only problem is after it's used, the soils just run out of all the nutrients, and the only thing left is really grass that can grow. The second thing is you've lost that climate condition where the trees create their own rain, and it actually dries out. You have that sun, that tropical sun beating down on the ground, dries the ground out. Very difficult for anything to grow back. Okay, and so you end up with destroyed rainforests like this. And the sad part is the rainforest to go through succession is not like succession here, where it takes 100 years to go back into a mature forest. In tropical rainforest, it takes up to 10,000 years to go through succession. This is an ancient ecosystem that's been around for a long, long time, and that's why you have so many specialists that have found small niches in there. A great example would be like the avocado tree, which we cut down for furniture, but yet it's the keystone species in the rainforest. The avocado tree is the only tree in the rainforest that produces fruit year-round, and so almost every form of life depends on the avocado tree. But we cut it down for furniture. We took away that and all the other original trees, and you end up with a destroyed rainforest like this, or you end up with, if it grows back, with a secondary forest, which is nowhere near as biodiverse. You're not going to have another avocado tree. It takes centuries to grow, and you end up with a weakened ecosystem. But you also have farming on a small scale, and this is most of the farming. Small little sections, because what happens is the governments build roads out into the rainforest, and then from those roads, people move out to the rainforest. All right, so you can see a road coming out right through here. And then people move out into the rainforest, and the only way they can survive in the rainforest is by creating farms. Well, they create a farm, let's say, right here at this intersection. And so they farm that. The problem is the soils are so bad that after 4 or 5 years, the soil's no good anymore. They can't farm it. So what do? They expand outward into the rainforest, and they go and farm some more land. And then in 3 to 5 years, that's no good, and so they expand outward some more, and they farm that land. And you can see how it creates these patterns of farmers just moving out further and further and further into the rainforest. And you can see the patterns of destruction moving away from these intersections. And that's what happens in the rainforest. These are not evil people. These are people just trying to survive in the rainforest. They can't survive in the cities. The government doesn't have the resources for them. And so the government sends them out into the forest to survive on their own and hopefully grow their own food. So here's what they do. They go out, they slash the rainforest, burn it. Okay? Use complete destruction. There's the home that they put on the piece of property, and then they farm that property, which you can see right here. Again, you can see these are not evil people. All right, these are people trying to create enough food for their families. These are the people that are destroying the rainforest right now, and it has a lot to do with our social and economic conditions throughout the world. All right, now what you don't realize is once they burn, they do the slash and burn, they farm, and then they move on. Well, when they move on, grass will still grow there for a short time. So cattle ranchers come in, and then they have cattle come in and they eat up all the grass. And in another 3 or 4 years, that grass is completely depleted, and the rainforest turns into a desert. And that's what you see here. So we have a lot to learn from the rainforest. And probably the greatest experiment ever done in the rainforest is Thomas Lovejoy's island experiment, which is actually right here. If I can go back for a second. Apologize. Probably the most famous experiment done in the rainforest is Thomas Lovejoy's island experiment. Okay, so this is Lovejoy's and what he did was, in Brazil, we learned an awful lot from this. In Brazil, when the area was going to be cut down for large agricultural project, he asked the people to leave these habitat islands, as you can see here. There's one of them. And then there's another one down here. Okay, and another one over here. All right. And another one on the other side, but you get the idea. So he asked them to leave these habitat islands. So they burned down and started agriculture everywhere else except for these islands. And then he studied these islands, and he studied them before they were cut down and then after they were cut down. And what he found out was that when you cut down the rainforest, the animals all go into these islands. I think that makes sense. It's called the Refugee Effect. They all of a sudden jump onto that island because it's the only place left. Well, if that island supported 14 monkeys, let's say, before the forest was burned down, now the forest is burned down, and all the other monkeys came because it was the only place for them to go, and now the island has 65 monkeys. Well, what's going to happen to the food resources? All right? What's going to happen to the monkeys? They starve to death, and the monkey population drops to zero. So what happens is you have massive increase because of population because of the refugee effect, and then a massive die-off. And that happened with every life form on these small islands. The other thing is something we talked about previously, and that's the concept of the edge effect. Now, the edge effect is when you take a tree right on the edge of the island, okay? Normally in the rainforest, that tree is in the center of the rainforest. And I said, in the center of the rainforest, you're talking about humid, no wind, low light if lower in the rainforest, okay? And not that hot, not that sunny. Now you put it on the edge of the rainforest. Now what do you have? Tremendous amounts of sunlight, lots of wind, dry conditions, because the sun just dries out everything, all right? And those conditions now kill off that tree. And then, of course, the tree next to it, and the tree next to it, and it goes all the way around. All these trees die off. And what he learned was, when those trees die off, now your island gets smaller. Well, the problem now is these are on the edge. So these trees die off. And your island gets even smaller. And it goes eventually down to nothing. The entire rainforest dies. So he noticed this on small islands. He also noticed it on large islands. They all start dying out. So his final conclusion is what I think is the most important thing when we're talking about biodiversity hotspots around the world, the ones that occur in the tropical rainforest. How do you save them? How do you preserve this biodiversity? You have to create something called a Biosphere Reserve. And I apologize, I lost my marker here. Give me a second, pull it back. And a Biosphere Reserve is when you pick out the most ecologically sensitive area. All right, one that you cannot harm. It's under the conservation or the principle of preservation. All right. And not to use this picture, but you pick an area, let's say this is the area, and you call that the core. And what that means is, in the core, you cannot touch it. Preservation, all human activities are restricted. It is basically left for nature because of its importance either as a habitat, okay, or it may contain the keystone species for the rainforest or whatever, for whatever reason. Then around that area, and you're talking thousands and thousands of acres, all right? It's what we call a buffer zone. And that buffer zone has restricted activities where you can do recreation, you can do research, and sometimes you can do limited agriculture depending on the needs of your community or the country itself. And then around that, all right, a little bit less protection called the transition zone. And the transition zone is where you combine conservation and agriculture or grazing or hunting, but in a sustainable way. So what you're doing is you're gradually getting more and more restrictive on how you use the land until you get to the core, which is the most important area. So that core is basically buffered by the buffer zone and transition zone. Outside of Biosphere Reserve, you don't have the regulations. So you can have your plantations and everything else. But this is now our strategy for saving the rainforest. And it has worked. Our problem is, can we keep pace with the destruction? And that's something that we're only going to find out in the future when we are either able to save the rainforest or we talk about this as a time at which we lost our rainforest. Thank you.